Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We will be talking about the globalized curriculum and need for evolution in education. Before we start, I just want to say my apologies. By 12:20, I need to go out because I have one more panel discussion with the government of India and the president. So I will be out, and my other panelists will take in the session, and they are really kind enough to do so. Thank you so much. So as we are going to discuss, so let me introduce my panelists. We have Elisa, we have Bhavna and Jay, who are going to talk about the need for evolution in education. Before we start, let's have an introduction about them. Yeah? Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
So my name is Jay Ranjit. I'm the Associate Director of Student Experience at ISD School of Design and Innovation in Mumbai. It's part of Atlas Skill Tech University, which is the first of its kind in India. We merge regular learning as we take it with design, with innovation, with technology, and bring skills to the forefront, making it the kind of future of education, as it were.
Is this working? Okay. So I'm Bhavna Bhaga. Okay. So I'm Bhavna Bhaga. I'm the director for University of Sunderland, which is based in the United Kingdom, but we do have campuses in the UK, particularly two of them and one in Hong Kong, and maybe in future we'll have one in Europe. So we believe in globalized education, transnational education, and we partner with various universities and colleges across the world. So when we talk about global curriculum, it is very, appropriate for me to talk on that particular platform because we believe in it. So that's about me.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Hi, my name's Elisa Grayson. I'm from Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. I'm the founder of Toma Bar Education. We specialize in cultural arts education, where we say our kids do not see the world as big and scary, but as an opportunity for the taking. What happens is that our teachers, they teach virtually, but they teach two schools at the same time. The cool thing about this is that these schools are located in two completely different time zones because they're in two completely different countries. That way our kids get that cross-cultural education, intercultural communication. Therefore, we found linkage to where our data actually creates driven behaviors in the classroom to increase academia across reading, writing, and arithmetic, to whereas we're looking at in the next 10 years to have data as well to provide that we are also a linkage to local economic development. So again, Elisa Grayson, Toma Bar Education.
Thank you. Finally, me here. So I'm Janita Hussain. I work as head of science at Dera Private School, Dubai. I've been in Dubai for this is my 5th year, and I was working for GEMS Education. I was head of science over there, and now again back to head of science in Dera Private School. So yes, we are going to talk about the globalized curriculum, and I see you all are from different countries. Now it's going to be fun. So India and Texas, and we are going to have fun maybe knowing about the curriculum. Basically, we are looking at even evolution in education. We have seen a lot of difference and a lot of changes which are happening in the education system. And after COVID, I think there is more changes which are happen now. So when we talk about globalized curriculum, do we think it is important for us to know about the world, what is happening? Like we have different kind of syllabus, we have different curriculum, the British curriculum, the American, the Indian, the Singapore curriculum is different. So one of the most tough curriculum, so the IB. So what do you think, should we have an integrated curriculum wherever we are, which country we are from? So do you think we need to have an integrated, or do we follow the same system of education?
For me, I think being a product of 3 different types of education systems, where I was in the ICSE board in school, and then the HSE board at the state level for my grades 11 and 12, and then doing a BA from Mumbai University, it's all a bit of a hodgepodge.
Yeah.
There needs to be more streamlining, I would say, but maybe not fusing everything together, because if you have different points of view, then you can challenge thoughts, you can challenge processes, but certainly streamlining needs to occur heavily. As an educator in a university now, I've been with ISD now for 4 years, it will be 5 in August. We've been working with a collaboration with Parsons School in New York, the new school, as a curriculum partner. So what we've done is we've taken their curriculum, And we've looked at the Indian domain and said, okay, how do we modify it? How do we change it to fit what our students need to work here, but also be globally ready? So that's one step we've taken, and we've now pushed it to another level as a university where we've opened something up called the Atlas electives. So students can pick electives from any of our 5 schools and study those. So if you're a design student and you're interested in the stock market, you can do that as well. So you're not just stuck doing one thing. You actually get a broader perspective on things, and we start from the basics. So you're not starting out and getting confused about things, but you're actually getting the right kind of learning very practically.
So is it like happening for years, or do you take like for months? How do the students actually choose it?
So the electives are presented to the students in their first year, and they then have 4 years to explore that space as much as they want. So it's all live, industry project based. There's not a limitation on theory, and if there's cross projects you'd like to do, let's say there's a student from the School of Film and Animation that's taken up a fashion elective because they're interested in costume design, then they can also work with somebody from another elective to create a project and turn that into an entrepreneurial practice. And we've got a lot of students that tend to do that, especially in the design school, where we've ditched the traditional way of learning and just said, okay, you have an idea, let's test the merit of it. Actually set up a small business, let's see if it works. Let's get students from the SDM faculty to come in and say, okay, what kind of strategy is going to help you? Let's work that in. So it becomes very collaborative, and I think that needs to be the evolution more than anything, where we cross subjects. And we just got some great news from the Government of India and from the UGC, the University Grants Commission, which is the old format of a bachelor's degree is about to change. It's going from a 3-year singular track to a cross-learning track over 4 years. So what I wanted 15 years ago is actually happening now.
Yes, that is from traditional method of learning now to skill-based learning. It is completely really nice. Bhavna, we wanted to talk about the globalized curriculum, and you were very keen on telling us. Can you just tell us more about it?
See, for me, I have a very young son. He's about 10, and I'm an educator myself. For me, when I've been traveling, working in different parts of the world, meeting so many people, educators, and working with different curriculums in different parts of the world, what I have seen, kids today are 10 years ahead of us. Because when I was his age, I don't think I could have touched a program like computer science or computer networks. His 6th grade curriculum has computer science. The first second I saw it, I was scared. I was scared because for me, that is something I saw in my bachelor's. It was more a choice than actually the curriculum, particularly in India, particularly for me. But when I saw that for my son, I was pretty amazed that the schools are taking such initiatives. Of course, choosing a school was our choice as a parent, but to see that evolution, that revolution, that growth for a child to learn the basics of computer science or computer networks is an amazing thing. When I saw my son tell me about those 5, different WAN, LANs and other aspects of computer, I was like, okay, it took me 20 years to learn that, and maybe he's learning at the age of 10, and which is a great thing. And that's how I believe that globalized curriculums do help students to connect with different students in different parts of the world. I mean, he's learning French, for an example, that's been there in Indian curriculum, but it was at the grade of 10th and 12th in Maharashtra and different parts of India. But now it is in the grade 4, 5, 6, 7. That's really a great achievement. And I can see my son being comfortable talking in French, comfortable in, telling or brooding over his knowledge about French. And it's a good thing because when he would travel to certain countries, he would be able to connect to those people, communicate with those people, and I'll be the idiot there who would not know anything about what he's saying. But it's a good thing. It's a very good thing. And if we make our kids future ready, it's always a good thing. I mean, if I knew in my young age what my future would be like, I might have told myself that, Bhavna, learn this, learn that, learn that. That's what you might need. But today, he's doing that, and I can see what he might have to. So I encourage him to do coding, which is also something which is new for our generation, our kids at least for them. And he's a coder, and a young coder, he makes games. So when I say these things with pride as a parent, I'm talking for every parent who sits on that pedestal of being, having a child learning different things. So global curriculum does have a lot of advantage to the child in his confidence, in his willingness to go and try different things. I think as me, I would have never done that 20 years back when I was his age. I would have said, no, this is new, this is alien, this is something I might not want to. It would have been, I mean, the choice was not there. It was not an option for us. Those were things we had to research and go beyond ourselves. And I remember when I was 12 and I wanted to do Coral Draw. It was pretty alien for people in Gujarat, what is Coral Draw? And I wanted to do it because I wanted to put art into the digital platform. I learned that. Till date, I use it. I use the latest versions, but I use it, and it's quite useful to learn things at an early stage. So globalized curriculums, again, help. Schools getting those things on board in their curriculums helps the students to take it as more, a more resourced and decided. I mean, if I want to do it, it's quite a choice for the child, and that's what I'm really appreciating, that the new education system or the government of India making those initiatives, allowing other country universities and colleges to open campuses or doing partnerships and working with transnational education helps the global curriculums to be available for everybody in the country and all different price rates, but it's a choice.
Thank you, Bhavna. Because even when I was teaching in India, it was ICSE. So we had this traditional method of teaching. Just teach and then give it to the class. And then they just write down the answers. And whatever questions we asked, they had to just answer it up. But when I moved to Dubai, I saw a different way of learning because they follow national curriculum over here. And it is all differentiated tasks. And we give it based on the personalization of the students. So it was completely a change. Now I think in Bangalore, again, where I was working, they have changed into differentiated tasks. So there is an evolution in education. Yes, Elisa, what do you think about the evolution in education? Do you think there's a need for a change?
Before I ever answer any question, I like to kind of define where my mindset is, just by universal definition, just to bring everyone on the same path. I know that sometimes there can be a little bit of fear when you put the word global in front of something, which is predominantly why people like to use more of the word intercontinental or international, because global can bring along the fear of globalism. And I'd just like to differentiate that that is not the definition that is being used here in the terminology of expressing oneself, as far as the type of curriculum that we're talking about. And more or less, think more of the term globalization, which is used more towards commercialization, which is something that we're familiar with multinational companies. So think more import-exports on your coast, and just think about that importing and exporting of curriculum is what we're talking about. Now, the reason why I am for this personally is because before the pandemic, we had something going on that's still going on. It's called a global learning crisis. And one of my favorite quotes that I like to say here is, prior to the pandemic, of the 250 million children that are currently out of school right now, even more, 330 million children are in school but failing to learn. Now, one thing that we may have all noticed, whether you're in track 1 or track 2, that there's not as many differences as we thought in a lot of the things that we need to overcome, a lot of the challenges. We've maybe found ourselves relating a little bit more, seeing a lot of the similarities, being able to make those connections, and even if so, being able to see the intersections of some of those challenges, to whereas we can partner and we can collaborate. And so that's where it proceeds with this type of curriculum here, where we need to keep the ability for each nation, for each country, intercontinental, to have, of course, that freedom to be able to, yes, export, import what they want, right? But as far as curriculum goes. But I think that as far as bringing in something that could really promote more collaboration and more unity and more partnership among the schools and learning things like you're saying, the language, French language. Wouldn't it be remarkable, and this is something that we do, to be able to learn this language with people who are in French-speaking countries predominantly, to have that reinforced, to whereas, hey, we don't have the funds for individuals to be able to go to these countries and be immersed into this, but if we can put it on a global scale where our curriculum can feel as if you're actually there experiencing it, I think many of us agree. We learn things if we're actually practicing them, but not just practicing them, but if we actually put ourselves within those situational elements that reinforce that learning, to whereas we don't just grow to like it, we grow to love it. And one thing that's controversial that I brought up not too long ago is to think about, what if we had something like this going on right now within the two that we know, Ukraine and Russia? What would be the response? How would it be different? Would this be going on right now if we had this sort of approach to learning, cross-cultural knowledge, and intercultural communication? What if this went on way beyond now? What if we got this started way beyond the Berlin Wall? I was in Germany when it fell. What if these things happened far beyond then? Where we be where we are today? I can't answer that for certain because I'm not a genie. But what I can do is be able to use the data that's in front of me, the common sense I was blessed with at home, thank you, Jesus, and be able to move forward with that. So that's what I'd just like to reaffirm with that when we say global curriculum. Think it from the approach of globalization, multinationals, because as we know, business is no longer just local. It's expanding all over the globe. So if we're going to be able to sustain that and be able to sustain these relationships that we have with different countries, we're going to have to look at these intersections that we have and begin to place ourselves within that, whether it's using history for decision making or placement or even storytelling. I invite you to just consider that. What do you think?
I think that absolutely makes sense, definitely. And to just, add on to that, there is a very clear example of how the world's problems are pretty much the same. We're all trying to solve the same things, but the context might be different. And if we don't have that globalized approach towards learning, right, bringing in globalized curriculums, then we don't really understand external context. Then it's just me taking my solution and handing it over and saying, apply this, and it doesn't work, and then you're sitting there going, well, this doesn't work, you're a fool, and I'm a fool for listening to you. And then everyone's just a big fool because nothing gets done. But what we found also through practice, just through our students, right? Our students are, like I said, learning through a global curriculum. They're bringing that to students of a much younger age. They work with students from underprivileged backgrounds and from rural spaces in India where that kind of thinking isn't even available. But by introducing it to them, they've been able to solve problems just for their neighborhoods and their families. And I think if we start introducing these conversations, then you're right. Maybe a Ukraine-Russia situation wouldn't happen. Maybe the Berlin Wall would be a different conversation. Maybe everything around the world would be a very different conversation. I love to live in the world of science fiction, and you often see people talking about doomsday, doomsday, doomsday constantly. But science fiction isn't just about doomsday, right? There's so much hope in it. And if we start introducing these kinds of global contexts into the curriculum, if we bring those points of view in, just at a young level, it can change what we see the future as.
And they're already doing this, right? With social media?
Oh, absolutely.
So the barrier to entry is just knocked down.
Okay, for me, I think, I am not the Prime Minister, Mr. Modi or Obama or anybody who is in power to make changes in the world. I'm just the drop in the ocean. Sitting as an educator, I feel we can't change everything, but whatever we can as educators, as people in position of what exactly we do in our seats at offices or at businesses, I think we appreciate, I definitely do, the kind of evolution that education has made in general with accepting how America teaches, how Canada teaches, how Australia teaches, how Singapore teaches. There are countries who emphasize on physical fitness. There are countries who emphasize on sports. There are countries who are into military training for schools. There's so much you can learn from every sort of part of the world. I went to Sri Lanka first time. I was ashamed for the level of cleanliness, for the level of, civilization in the country, though it was a part of India in past. Now today, India has all the money, all the power, everything possibly, but they do not invest in this. We talk about clean India and all that, but there's still a lot to do for our country. But where a smaller country like Sri Lanka has achieved a lot more better, or Singapore has achieved much more in terms of, we just saw a slide in the next room about it. So just coming back to what we are discussing on this thing is about global curriculums. And global curriculums is nothing but learning from different parts of the world, engaging with different people. Social media has been a great platform for kids. Young kids are seeing so much. Like every time you see a young kid in your house, you might be seeing a Korean channel or an American channel. My son loves the high school series, and he keeps on watching them, and I always don't understand what does he enjoy in that. And he hates the Indian series that happen here. He really doesn't like them because he doesn't connect with that. He wants to have this, what do you call, in American schools you have this, there's a place where you store everything.
The lockers.
The lockers, yeah, he quite likes the locker. So that is one way to say that the influence with kids and what influences them is different cultures, different places, and they all like it. And let's accept that. We should accept that our kids, our future wants to be global citizens. That's what it is. I don't see a difference between me and an American or a Canadian. I don't. Our cultures are different. We come from different people. I want to be myself everywhere else. I don't fake accents. I don't want to be behaving like them. But yes, I have to connect with them. So I have to dress a way, I have to speak a way, I have to do things in a particular way. And similarly, global curriculums would teach you something to sit equal on the same level and talk with each other, maybe language, be it technology, or be it anything that would help them to connect and to work together to achieve something. Because everybody on planet Earth is working together to achieve something, whatever it is. Be it political issues or educational issues or social issues, everybody is just trying to connect. And global curriculums, the intention behind that is to let that connection continue to happen,
I think that absolutely makes sense, and we apply this, and actually we got to apply this when I was in school. We would have exchange students come over, and we would basically adopt them for a week. And you just take them around the city, get them to understand the culture, get to know how we do things, say things, introduce them to little, what's the right word? Little affectations of our cultures, right, and behaviors and the way we do things. And I learned this at home as well. So when we're talking about global curriculums, it can't just be in the academic space in the school, but we need to also introduce it to help parents work with it at home. Because what we found over the last 5 to 7 years is there's a conversation happening in school, there's a conversation happening at home, the two don't align, and the poor child is confused. And now what does the child do? Right? The parents saying, be this, say this, and do this. And the school saying, be this, say this, and do this completely differently. And then there's a new world that comes in after grade 12, which is the professional world, which is also then saying, we want you to do this, and if you don't do this, you're not rewarded. So how do we kind of balance that, right? So I think that global curriculum conversation must also happen for parents to help bridge that gap in a way.
I think that's one of the best things that I love about the organization that I represent. Aside from academia scores, one of the best outcomes is family. That's one of the things that just, it's amazing how that comes. And I crack jokes about this from time to time, but it comes from a real place. I call them my grandparents' mafia. As we've seen more grandparents playing a role in raising a child. And honestly, that's nothing new. It's something that's happened since BC, right? But we've seen more of that and more of that taking over. I think that self-made mentality, I hope that's dropped pretty soon, where we have a family-made mentality. And within that, I gave my grandparents' mafia an official title now, so now they're the Grandparental Council. And we use their insights and their knowledge and their history and their cultures and everything that they have that they're willing to teach me, I'm willing to actively sit there and listen to, along with the other parents as well. And so when you mix that family component in there, I'm telling you, the grandparents are the secret recipe. Once the grandparents get involved in that, then the parents, maybe it's an obligation factor, maybe it's I have to see them at Thanksgiving factor, Maybe it's they won't watch my kids this weekend factor. Whatever it is, it gets the parents heavily involved from there when it becomes a complete family affair, to whereas the education and the learning, it doesn't just stop at a brick and mortar. It actually goes, and it's the spillover effect of excitement and curiosity, when from there it goes into the home. And not only does it go into the home, it goes into the community. And then from there, it just goes all around. It becomes a whole new culture. And that's the thing, a culture of learning. Because again, we have a learning crisis after the pandemic. We still have a learning crisis. Those stats that I gave, they're 3 times that now. It's even worse. And so at this point, for us to be able to make up for that time, for us to be able to get back on course, and I'm firmly 10 toes on the ground, very sure that we can make up for the 2 years of learning that we've missed. And it doesn't have to include 365 days more of school and doubling down. I believe there is a smart way to go about this. I believe that family is the recipe to get it done, because learning has to become the new culture. And when learning becomes a new culture, it becomes a new value, becomes a new love. And from there, it's something that sustains itself. And we're no longer having to do it by ourselves as educators, nor do we feel like we are doing it by ourselves as educators, which I think is the greatest thing, to have families and having parents, like right here, learning it regardless. Coding is hard.
All know the word international education. A lot of students from every part of the world go and study overseas to different countries. America being the favorite for South Asians or Nigerians, or many parts of the world love to go to US to study. At one point, just for South Asia, I'm just talking for my region because that's where I expertise, so I can only talk about my region, South Asia, which includes all the Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Maldives, Mauritius. Yeah. For them, every term, 1.5 to 2 billion international students go to America, Canada, US, Australia to study. They are trying to achieve or become equal, or at least get that opportunity to find jobs and careers in different parts of the world. Now, what does global curriculum bring in? Brings the solution. They are bringing those curriculums in your country to help those students to get the same skills that they were not getting that before, getting disadvantaged. What COVID did allowed more of this. What COVID did is all schools, all colleges, all universities had to stop, and they had to suddenly one morning wake up to a hybrid education system. And that's when a big revolution came into the global curriculums, because that's when everybody thought that maybe in future or maybe presently they can't go abroad, they can't study abroad, so how do they continue to get the best out of it? And including myself, going back to education was a big decision. I started my master's, I'm doing a master's in international business law, because I felt that was a skill gap area I wanted to learn and achieve. And when I applied for it to my university, the university asked me to be interviewed because I'm not a lawyer by my basic bachelor's. So they said, we need to interview you. So I did that, and the first question was, why do you want to do this course? And my answer was, in the whole world, there are 3 universities who offer this course. One of them is you. I'm a staff at your university, and you're going to fund me. So the tutor was laughing, and he said, but why do you want to do international business law? I said, because I recruit international students. We have compliances, visas, bureaucracies, I would say governance around admissions, curriculum mapping, and all of that. So I wanted to learn law, which would help me to understand the legal aspects of things. And in case I get into trouble, I can save myself out of it. So he smiled and he said, fine, Bhavna, we're getting a full scholarship for you to do this. Because at this time of my career, where I should be more focusing on my family, on the situation around COVID, around business, which is going to take a big hit, which we were not sure of, I said, I'll do it, and he put a condition to me, only if you aim to finish this course, not just to start and leave it in the middle. And I said, okay, I'll do that. And trust me, at business, we did double of what the targets or whatever numbers they asked us. It didn't change anything. It moreover helped me to do better, because while learning things like podcast, which I've never done in my life or asked for me to do in my course. And I'm like, wow, I mean, this is a new way to teach. This is a new way to, bring in the confidence to speak. So yeah, so global curriculums can be applied in every aspects, and we all need to look at education as a non-stop investment in ourselves. I don't think financial investment is the only thing we should be bothered about. There is our own self we need to learn, we should need to educate. Until the end of the time, we should continue to. I hear a society statement which I might want to talk about is, many men or many females or many people I know who are elders, who are in relationships, they always say, I can't change. I cannot change. I am like this. I've been like this for all my life. That has to change. That has to change because our cells, our body, our hair, every day that changes. So how can we say we wouldn't change? Change is inevitable. You have to change. And the change comes mostly from education, from learning, from exploring. I believe travel has taught me so much that I could not learn from my books. I have really learned a lot from travel. Been to 22 countries, dozens of cities, never stopped, and I still want to explore the 120 left, which have not traveled so far. But it's something which I think helps you to understand people skills. It helps you to learn cultures. It helps you to understand food, which is a biggest struggle for an Indian in many parts of the world. But then I can eat all the cuisines. I survive. I know how to survive that. And a pandemic like COVID can happen again. A situation like anything can happen again. We can be at war. We can have other issues. How do we survive all of that? By being stronger, and you become stronger when you know how to connect with people. That's really important. You only become strong when you can connect to people, when you always believe there's somebody out there who would listen to you. Because most of the time the help comes from people you don't know. People you have no relationships with. You get help from the universe, the energy around you, which you never expected.
My ears are ringing right now. So it must be someone that heard this. For anyone who works in governance, I know one of the things that is on their mind specifically is being able to keep that talent locally as well and being able to build up your own economic development. And so while, yes, there is that network effect of being open internationally, there is the other unexpected market effect locally where the students begin to have this reaffirmed pride in their nation, in their culture, through their family, and through that curriculum to where they're being able to learn not only about themselves, but about the world as well. And so there is this unexpected network effect that happened, just so you know, where there is an increase where students are more likely to stay at home in their country and build it up versus having to leave or wanting to leave or feeling that the next route is to quite naturally leave and build up someone else's economic development. So while there is that sort of, speculation of, well, we're going to go ahead and introduce them to the world. They're going to want to leave. They're going to want to go somewhere else. And that's perfectly fine. We all visit from time to time in different places. But they bring those skills, they bring that information back home, and they stay home. And they put that value and they insert it back into your local economic development. And I'm telling you, those numbers far exceed the notion that confirmation bias of assuming that they're just going to leave and put that into another nation's economic development. It actually has been proven that this type of curriculum puts that injection back locally to build up your economic development. That's something that's speculated, that's something that's not true. It's very easy to fall into that conversation because it's very easy to fall into those conversations. So in this way, we are educators. We are bound to never take the easy way out. We haven't prior to COVID. We're not going to now. And so within that, please just keep that in mind as well within your own decision making.
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, when we think about our own students here, right, whether it's in Asia or you just look at particular places around the world, it's absolutely factual. Our own students, they've taken these learnings. Some of our students actually do an exchange program where they go to Utrecht, they go to HKU in Utrecht. And they spent 2 weeks there working with students from a whole bunch of different countries, right? So they don't go and work as their own team, like in the Indian cohort, and then you have a Pakistani cohort, and then you have a Sri Lankan cohort, and a Dutch cohort. It's not like that. What they do is once they're there, they're broken up into multicultural groups. Each group is given a real world problem that they have to solve for a real world client, right? They have to work together, they have to document everything, and then they have to justify their decisions. What's happened from that is the minute they've come back here, they don't want to do the typical question and answer evaluation for their own skills. They actually want to do life projects. They want to go in and say, okay, there's a bunch of people who need help. How do we solve it for them? What do we do with these newfound skills and newfound learnings from all these different cultures? What are things that we can bring in from our learnings in that curriculum style that gets applied to a local space? We've had libraries being set up. We've had a public toilet system getting revamped. We've had an entire, what we have is an Anganwadi, or basically a space for young children who are orphaned or their parents are working in there. It's a government-run space. Our kids have gone in and taught those kids stuff. And I've done this myself with organizations like Teach for India, right? I'm a self-taught artist. I didn't know the name Picasso until I was 17 years old. And I went to an ICSE school, which is meant to be one of the better ones in the world. They didn't talk to us about art. They didn't talk to us about these names. So I didn't know. I just thought, oh, I draw human beings weirdly, and that's not okay. And then I discovered Picasso, and I was like, wait, what? I've been doing it right this whole time. There's nothing wrong with me. It changed my perspective on learning, right? The last 2 days, I couldn't be here because I was part of a workshop with Adobe for their new programs, Fresco and Capture, with a bunch of Asian artists from India, one was from Thailand, one was from Vietnam. We had a Pakistani artist as well. We were just having conversations for 2 days about illustration and digital art. Things I had never known of before. I now get to take that learning into my classroom, which means my kids will now get to play around and develop beautiful artworks that tell not just Indian stories in an Indian way, but in a globalized way, in something that people can digest without losing any of that context.
So I've traveled to a lot of schools, colleges and universities. The big changes I'm seeing these days is schools having, Japan room and Korea room and, America room and Canada room. And there are students of grade 4, 5, 6, all of those. I went to UPS, which is University of Petroleum and Engineering Sciences, Dehradun. They had students from France, from Spain, studying in India, learning oil and petroleum sciences in India. It's such an exchange. It's such a great idea to have people from all over the world. Australia announced that all their doctors can come to India to do 1 year of internships here, because there's more population in my country, which I'm not very proud of. But the students can get more experience in terms of hands-on practice. So a lot of countries have initiated a lot of exchange, and they recognize the power, maybe be it the population or the size or the economy of that country or the educational expertise of that country, and they are helping each other to learn from each other. And that's what I see every day when I go to universities, colleges, campuses. We call something called transnational education, which is to educate people in different parts of the world. So one of the things that I do in my job position is to do transnational education, and Sunderland is at Pioneer as a university for that. We have about 350 partners across the world. We also have student exchange programs where students can go to another country, do an element of the program in that country, in their technology, in their facilities and state-of-art rooms and structures, and it gives the student a lot more than he expects. So somehow I think I've seen all those evolutions in last 10, 12 years. And I think importantly, it is our mindset, which I believe. If you believe that you want to be future ready, you have to accept certain things, you have to work towards it, be it parent, be it educators, be it industry people. We have to be open to different ideas. I think the minute we shut down ideas, we end everything. We end every relation. And I believe that global curriculums is a very major step. It's a very major step. It's been happening for a long time now, but we are talking about it right now and addressing it in different opinions of it. There's only one aspect of that which I feel a little challenging, is the ability of the child and the choice of the child. Those two things are challenging. That is because every child is different. Our 5 fingers are not same. So you would expect a child, and they need assistance, they need support. And that support will only come from parents and teachers and educators. So yeah, we should look at that element, which has not been looked very closely.
I think in the last 10 minutes that we have, I think one thing we've not really spoken about is assessment as part of the global curriculum introduction. So maybe we want to pick that up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you actually brought me really well into this about how not every child learns the same. There's definitely a diversification factor when it comes to assessment. I have to say that I'm still a little disappointed in assessment and how it has not been as rigorously planned as it should have been. I think it has been in accordance to a timeline that is unrealistic for educational leaders to be able to get that type of expectation out of students based on an assessment that is linear. I think that's absolutely preposterous for us to be making decisions that are still linear. Businesses stopped operating on a linear platform over a decade ago, yet we're still operating in education on a linear platform. I think today they call it a circular model, a circular economic model for how you do business. And not too long ago, we just saw a spear of platform businesses, the sharing gig economy take off like nobody's business. Yet for some reason in education, we want to sit here and look at assessment as a linear business model to this day. No wonder why we're failing. I'll say it, no wonder why we're failing. Businesses do not operate and make money through a linear concept. Why should we expect education to have a positive outcome? I think someone mentioned accounting not too long ago. Look at your debits and credits. It's not looking great. Look at your stockholders' equity. It's not looking great. You're having far more liabilities that are building up than assets. It's not looking great. And anyone would apply the same type of terminology towards running a business. And so that's something that can be mirrored, that's something that can be correlated when we look at education and specifically look at assessment. We have to stop assessing our students on a linear platform. It didn't work before, it's not working now. Just stop it. Throw the whole thing away. And honestly, I don't give a crap. I don't need to see your data next year, throw it away. I'll come back to you in a couple of years. We can look at your data then. I believe we had an amazing doctor that got up here and said, don't on the first day of school, don't sit there and measure your students. Let them know that they're loved. I think someone said soft skills. She said throw that word away too. She said human skills. Throw it away. So at this point, throw your assessments away. They're crap. They're hot, watery BS. And let's go ahead and anchor that change, and let's start building that bridge as we walk across it, and start making an assessment that can actually assess humans and not a linear approach to what we assume thinking and decision-making should look like.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Any questions from anyone? We'd be happy to speak our thoughts on our own thoughts.
Any questions from the audience?
I just told them all to throw it away, so I don't think they're anxious to ask me questions. Sorry, guys. I ruined it for the bunch.
Right here.
Agree 100%, I think, with the throw away the data concept. I think there's emphasis on data collection in general. But I feel like that also comes from a corporate mentality, which you were saying corporations, got rid of this. But I feel like in education and in the NGO world, we're corporatized. And that's actually a problem because we're following the corporate model, and that is you need data. You have to prove yourself with data. And kids are people, we're people, and everybody can't fit into a formula of data collection. So, I don't know, any comments on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have to agree and also disagree. And my point of disagreeing comes from the word stakeholder. So just keep that in mind as I continue here. So running as a business and using data for decision making, absolutely, right? Spot on. However, businesses are slapped in the face by those stakeholders who actually have to purchase their products or services. And they have no choice but to recognize the generational changes that come with that. So they are impacted instantaneously from a part of revenue. So they bring theirs in through the stakeholder revenue. In education, we bring ours in through stakeholders, but a different type of stakeholders. I would like to say a lazy stakeholder, per se. One that goes to sleep and just complains and, it's not in their refrigerator, it's not in their face, it's not transactional daily for them, right? This is from a voter citizen stakeholder, where those property taxes, federal, state, are being impacted into that line of revenue to therefore make those decisions on how we apply the application, on how we look at the application of data and therefore make the decisions. So while I am not necessarily advocating that education become a stereotypical for-profit education model, I don't think it would hurt us to look at some of the models of business, like B Corp, benefit corporations, those that use that circular model that actually take into concept 3 different types of stakeholder, from an economic standpoint to a community standpoint to an environment standpoint. Wouldn't it be crazy if we had our own circular model of how we do business and education? They say that we do. When you look at the data, they say that you do. But do you actually get a circular model when you look at 364 pages of new data that they put out at the end of the year? We can't put that all in one sentence. So again, not necessarily advocating for education being ran as a stereotypical business, but I do think that we do need to take into account the generational changes and the stakeholder effects when we're applying our line of revenue to decision-making
practices.
So decades ago, in order to help kids with disabilities or learning disabilities to get through an educational system, they put into place IEPs, individual educational plans. Why are we not doing IEPs for every child? Why are we not creating an individual process for each child to get through the
That's
school?
ma'am, because corporate came in between. But education
Because it's
became
about
business.
mass production of
This is when
educated
education became business. I get you. I would like to talk on that part because in my very early years in my school, we had an inflet section. I was a part of, working with those kids. I used to take that as a volunteer work. And what I learned from these kids, they were more able than I am. They were more capable than I am. And I do get what you wish to do. But I think what has happened over the years is people have started making this also like any other business. Like, I was teasing somebody outside, our body is 70% water. The water on earth is about 70-75%. One man came, put the water into bottle and made business out of it. The same thing is happening with education. Education was traditionally knowledge, gaining something, learning something from wisdom, from, travel, people, if you go back to 500 years back, education was very different. We still need it. We still need that way of teaching our kids. I feel I don't want my child to compete. I want my child to learn and enjoy the process of learning. So that thought process is going out of the window since a lot of things are happening. Everybody wants IB and was international and Cambridge, they all talk that. And I just tease people, this is the same biscuit packet, just changed with the gold, logo. But that's why we all are part of it. We all are a part of it. We all like cultures. We all want to travel to New York and go to places. But somewhere, if you ask me, I have learned one thing in my life. I have to be happy with what I am as a human being. Not about my weight, not about my look, but we're happy with what I am as a person inside. And education should teach you that. Education should teach you to evaluate your own self, assess your own self. See, it's very important.
And this is exactly where my role actually comes in. So I'm part of a team called the Student Experience Team. In the past, that team would have just looked at the admissions process and then stopped there, right? How is it going forward? They wouldn't care. What we've done is we've changed that. I'm particularly suited to working with students one-on-one. It doesn't matter whether it's 10 students that have legitimate learning disabilities or physical issues or anything of that nature, or any of the students. We have 360 a cohort as of right now. From next year, we'll be going up to 480, and then from the years after that to 720. Does that mean that we can't cater to every student? No. That's what I'm there for. That's what my entire team is there for, where the classroom learning, if it has to be standardized, it gets standardized. We look at everything outside of that. We make sure that if they're finding it difficult in the classroom to learn a concept, that we sit down with them and find a new solution for them, work with the faculty to make sure that they're able to apply that in the classroom and say things a certain way so that everyone gets it. Or at the very least, gets it to a certain point. And then we can step in and help them push beyond that point. So we saw this coming about 3 years ago, and we realized it's going to be a big impact point, which is why the whole team was created. And so there's 5 of us in the team. One looks at the hostel life, one looks at the academics, one looks at the emotions, another one looks at their skills. And so the 5 of us work together to really help the student go beyond any of those struggles that they would have if they couldn't understand something in the classroom. The reason we did that is because I was one of those kids. Up to grade 6, I was told, up to grade 4, I was told, oh, you're amazing with mathematics. We were just doing plus, minus, multiply, divide. And then suddenly we were introduced to algebra, and I was just like, gone, over the top of my head. And nobody really stepped in to help me figure maths out. It was only in grade 12 that I actually got a faculty member who sat down with me and said, okay, you're confused about set theory. Let's figure out how to see set theory in life. They pointed out to me that a library is set theory in action. They pointed out to me that going to a market to buy something is game theory in action. So based on those experiences myself, I started building myself up as an educator to solve exactly these problems. Because each of us can do something special, but if we don't work together, it's pointless for the student. So I think that just to kind of round off our conversation on the global curriculum, this is what it allows us to do. It allows us to find all these bits and pieces from around the world, the best practices as we call them, and then find a way to bring them together and implement them.
And if you ask me, I'm against the corporate coming into the schools. Okay,
Thank
because our kids need to be empathetic. They need to be socially acceptable of the differences of the, as I said, the kids who have different needs. We need to appreciate that the kids cannot be thrown with so much that they can't be the human they need to be. That's what I'm against. I'm very happy with the global curriculum concept because it helps them to engage, learn, and evolve and all of that. But corporate coming, when mentoring, is that what a kid needs? No, he doesn't need mentoring. He needs counseling. He needs support. I would suggest schools to go back to counseling, giving peer-to-peer support. If they see a child not performing well or the child behaving differently, they need counseling. They don't need mentoring. So I personally don't believe in the corporate entering the schools. Corporate should be there in universities, colleges, all of that, because they have to be then corporate ready or business ready or career ready. But kids, when they go to school, they are going to an institution of education where they learn to be a good human being first. So that's more important.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful.